Alright, just going to give a quick little tutorial about how to use your GDC or graphic display calculator. And we're just going to look at some basic functions and some of the things that you can do with your graphing calculators to check some of your answers and just basically get used to how they work. The first thing you'll notice that's graph related is this button that says y equals. That's the enter key to put any function in there. So, and notice it's like the function of x is equal to y equals, and you can actually put multiple functions on the same graph. And this one will graph with a blue line, the red line, etc. So you can go back and forth. So let's just start with a basic linear function. So for example, if my slope was 3 and I had a y-intercept of 2, I could say 3x, and this is the x button here, x plus 2, and then I can go ahead and graph that. Okay. As you notice that it's zoomed in like this, I was playing around before and I was zooming in, and I can also zoom to the standard screen. So if I go to zoom, I can zoom in more, I can zoom out if I press 2 or 3, and if I just want to go to the standard screen, I press zoom 6, so press 6, and that will give me a window that's suitable here. Okay. Now if I want to go and zoom in again, I can do that anytime. Another thing to note when we're graphing and you're entering a function, if it's a negative slope or the coefficient, even if it's a quadratic function, if it's a negative coefficient, you make sure to use this negative key and not subtraction. Okay, so if I had a slope of negative 1/2 and I went minus 1/2 and 1 divided by 2x, and then let's say the y-intercept was negative 2. If I go to graph this now, it's going to give me an error. Okay, so I have a problem. I need to go back. So I'm stuck now. So to get myself out of a situation where I'm stuck, I can go second, and I hit the mode button. It will quit. Second, quit. Now I'm done. So I can go back here, and I need to go down and edit. So I'm going to clear that. I'm going to change it to negative 1/2 x minus 2, and now that since I use the negative key for the coefficient, it will actually work. So if I go to graph that, and you can see I have two graphs here. Okay. Another thing I can do, and I'm just going to go and change this. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to look at a table. So we've seen the graph. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the second one. And let's look at the table that we have for the first one. So if we go to graph, it's there. But if I use the second function, and you'll notice it says table above graph, I go second graph, it will give me a table of values. So these are all the input values here, and the output values are here. And notice it goes by increments of 1. Oftentimes, you have to pick increments that give you integer values if you want to make a table, because a lot of them have a lot of decimal places up to even the nearest thousandth. Okay, in this case, they're all integer values. Let's take a look at another feature. When we look at linear functions, when we go to graph them, you can see in this case it's hard. It's kind of easy to tell the y-intercept is 2. It looks like it's 2. And the x-intercept, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere between negative 1 and 0. But if I zoom in a little bit, so I go to zoom in, zoom 2, that might help. So I can see things. I'm going to press enter. Now it'll zoom in for me. Now we can see, yeah, the y-intercept looks like it's 2. Okay. Now, let's say we didn't know for sure that it was 2. We could go ahead and calculate what it is, because we know the input value at the y-intercept, the input value of x is 0. Okay, so there's a button here that says trace, and above it says calculate. So I can go second, and I hit the trace button, calculate. I'm going to calculate for a value because I know the input value is 0 for the y-intercept. So I'm going to go press 1, and it's asking for the x value. We know the x value there is 0, and then I press enter, and it's going to give me, oh, the y-intercept is 2, which we could see in the graph anyway. You could do that to find any point with respect to x on this line. So if I want to find, well, what is y when x is negative 5? I could also find out what that is. That could be really useful in some real applications where you have functions that are, they're not like integer values. They might be very complex. Okay, now x value. The x-intercept is somewhere here. We know it's between -1 and 0. Now, since we don't know the x value, the input is, we can't use the input. So we're going to use a different method. So again, you can calculate. So I'm going to go to second. I'm going to press that trace button to get calculate. This time we're going to find the 0. So we're going to press second, and instead of calculating the value, we're going to calculate 0. So we're going to press 2. That's selection 2. And it's asking for a left bound value. So I need to scroll left of the x-intercept. See, we're still right of the x-intercept. Now we're a bit left. Okay? You can see because we've gone below. So we're to the left of the x-intercept. I'm going to enter that value there. Now it's asking for a right bound value. So I'm going to go to the right of the x-intercept. That's far enough. I've gone past it. And I'm going to press enter. And now so we've got an x and we've got values on both sides. Okay? So now I'm going to press enter again, and it gives me the x value and y is equal to 0. And we can see that's -2/3 because we've got the 0.6 repeating. Okay? So that's how we find the x-intercept. It's not quite as straightforward as finding the y-intercept. Another feature I wanted to note is that sometimes we can find the equation of the line if we're given 2 points or maybe multiple points. But we only need 2 points to actually determine what the line is. Now, those are the coordinates. The way we do that is we go to stat, and we can enter the input and the input and the output columns. And so if we go to edit, which is already there, we press enter, it'll give us 2 columns. Now I've already entered some coordinates here, so the x coordinate of 1, the y coordinate is 4. So 1, 4 is one of the ordered pairs, and another ordered pair is 3, 8. Now I'm going to clear that. So I could clear them one by one, or I can clear the whole column if I click on L2 just by using this arrow key. I press clear and then enter. And I can clear column 1 likewise. So clear, enter, and I've got the entered column. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to enter the coordinates again. So 1, 4 was one of my coordinates. So 1, and then 4. So I'm going to actually go across 4. Now I've got 1, 4 in. Okay. And the other coordinate I had was 3, 8. And I'm enter that 3, 8. So I've got 2 points, which should be enough to give me an equation of a line. Okay. Now, in order to do that, I need to go to stat, and I want to go to calculate. And if you look at this list here, if we go down the list, we can see, oh, here's linear regression. That's for linear functions. This is a linear function. Later on, we'll look at quadratic regression, and we can actually find the equation of quadratic. Now we're just looking at linear functions. And notice it says ax plus b, which is similar to mx plus b, where m is the slope. In this calculator, a is going to represent the slope, and b is going to represent the y-intercept. Okay, so that's what I want to select. So I'm going to go 4. So I went to stat and then calculate, and then 4 for linear regression. And it says that the x represents L1. If you remember, we entered x values into L1. Y list is L2, so the y values were in L2. And I don't need a frequency list storage store reg equation. I don't need that. So I'm going to say yes, 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 and I'm going to calculate. Once I calculate, it's going to give me the values. So since a is 2, that means the slope is 2, and b is 2. That means the y-intercept is 2. So the equation of this line will be y equals 2x plus b. I just want you to kind of explore. It's kind of odd using these calculators to start with, and I don't expect that you can do everything right away, but do start playing around. You can check some of your answers using the graphing calculator, and I'm basically going to just slowly add more and more as the year goes by. All right, so have fun.